Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the Grant Amato case? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll go through the background of the case, I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then I'll offer my analysis. Grant Amato was born on May 20, 1989, in Florida. His parents were named Chad and Margaret. Amato was the youngest of three. His brothers were Cody and Jason. Amato graduated from high school in 2007 and earned a nursing degree in 2011. He was particularly close to his brother Cody, who was a nurse anesthetist. Amato had hopes of doing that same job. In June of 2018, Amato was working at a hospital. The staff called the police, saying that Amato was suicidal and had stolen a medication named propofol. He was arrested for grand theft. While out on bail, he spent a lot of time on his computer, eventually becoming interested in a Bulgarian model named Sylvia, who he had contact with via webcam. Amato wrote her name as Sylvie, S-Y-L-V-I-E, but her name is actually Sylvia, S-Y-L-V-I-Y-A. So I will call her Sylvia. Amato stole $200,000 from his parents and his brother, and he spent it on Sylvia, who he considered to be his girlfriend. The family did not press charges. They wanted to get Amato help. In December of 2018, Amato traveled to Japan with his brother Cody. They were both interested in anime, which seemed to be a motivator for this trip. When he returned to the United States, his family realized he was still obsessed with Sylvia. At their urging, he agreed to go into a rehabilitation facility located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Amato's parents and brother had paid thousands of dollars to pay off Amato's debts, for his attorney, for the trip to Japan, and now they're going to pay for the rehabilitation. They were doing everything they could to keep him out of prison. They told him that if he contacted Sylvia again, he was going to be kicked out of the house. The 2-month program he entered was for internet and sex addiction, but he left after 2 weeks. He wrote a letter on January 22 to a number of friends he met online, in which he proclaimed his love for Sylvia. I'll talk more about that letter in my analysis. This brings us to January 24, 2019. According to the prosecution, this is what happened on that day. Amato was home alone with his mother at about 4:30 p.m. The house was located in Seminole County. He shot her from behind while she was sitting at a computer desk at 4:45 p.m. At 5:30 p.m., when his father, Chad, arrived home, Amato shot him twice in the head. Amato positioned Chad's firearm in a holster backwards on Chad's right hip. Sometimes people do position a gun in this way. This is called a cross draw. They have to reach across their body and pull the gun from the opposite hip. It's sometimes used if somebody believes they'll have to draw a weapon when they're sitting down, like if they're in an automobile. So if somebody were left-handed, they would put the gun on their right hip with the grip facing forward. The problem here is that Chad was right-handed. Sometime between 9:30 and 10 p.m., Cody came home from work. Amato shot him as he entered the house. At some point, Amato took Cody's gun and placed it near Cody's body. But it was not the murder weapon. Amato did a poor job of trying to frame his brother. At 12:21 a.m., Amato made his way to a Publix supermarket. He logged onto the Wi-Fi. He accessed Cody's bank account at 2:08 a.m. to buy more tokens for Sylvia's website. When Cody didn't report for work, one of his coworkers called the police, who conducted a wellness check at 9:17 a.m. They discovered the bodies. Amato was arrested in a hotel on January 26 and questioned. In 3 hours of questioning, he never asked what happened to his family. He was released, then arrested again on January 28. Amato was convicted on July 31, 2019. In August, he was sentenced to life in prison. Now moving to my analysis. I'm not aware of any diagnosis being given to Amato. There's not a lot of information about his personality either. From looking at the hours of police interviews, Amato appears to be high in openness to experience. He was creative and invested in fantasy. And we see he seems to be mid-range in conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness, and perhaps above average in neuroticism. One area that was focused on during the trial was this 8-page letter that he wrote on January 22 to his online friends about Sylvia. Here are a few key items from that letter. The overall purpose of the letter was an apology to these different men. Amato considered them to be at least good acquaintances. He wrote that he made a mistake with Sylvia, upsetting her. He lied about being a gamer, driving a BMW, and owning his own house. He claimed to be something that he wasn't because he was intimidated. Amato wrote that his father and brother were controlling and forced him into that clinic in Fort Lauderdale. When he was in the clinic, his family accessed his computer and lied to Sylvia about him. Amato then individually addresses the people in this online group, saying how he was sorry and really appreciated them. He went on to write that he wanted a second chance with Sylvia, and he deeply cared for her. He believed that his relationship with Sylvia grew quickly, and they became close. This trapped him in his lies. He wanted to be a shoulder that she could cry on, and a person to whom she could express her emotions freely. He was unable to function without her. Not communicating with her was the most painful experience he had ever been through. This specific line appears to connect with the concept of addiction. Amato wrote that he truly loved Sylvia, even though she didn't believe someone could love someone so quickly. When an online model thinks the relationship is growing too quickly, that's a pretty bad sign. I wouldn't imagine these models typically want to slow things down. This would be like a video poker machine telling somebody to stop betting. Amato urged the members of the group never to lie to Sylvia, and if they had lied to her, they needed to come clean now. Here it would seem that Amato believed the people in the group were running under the same fantasy that he was. Like he had company, and maybe he did. Maybe they felt the same way about Sylvia. I guess this speaks well to Sylvia's future earning potential. There are plenty of customers out there. Amato wrote that he wanted to make Sylvia's dreams come true. I suppose, to be fair, I think he was making her dreams of getting rich come true. He should have specified the dreams to which he was referring. From this letter, we see someone who appears to have a poor understanding of relationships. Many of the things he was saying are red flags, but he doesn't seem to have any insight. As I understand it, it cost Amato around $10 a minute to communicate with Sylvia. He was spending about 4 hours a night on the webcam with her. So this comes to about $2,400 per session. When he no longer had computer access and/or could not afford to pay, he tried to reach Sylvia on her Twitter account, but she rarely responded. She only responded when he was paying her. Somehow Amato thought that that was consistent with a true romantic relationship. So what could be happening in a case like this? One-sided relationships can occur at a distance, like online, just like they can occur in person. A man compensating a woman for various levels of affection is not unheard of. What's really unusual is when the man believes there's some type of romantic commitment involved. The man believes he's in love, but the woman is simply operating a business. She is playing a part and perhaps being manipulative, but in a way, that's what the man is asking for. He is paying to feel some type of romantic connection, to feel wanted and necessary. It really comes down to a lack of empathy and a lack of insight on the part of the man. He is unable to understand that the woman is not really reciprocating. He might as well be in love with a vending machine. The man is addicted to the feeling of being in love, even though no love is actually there. It's an overinvestment in fantasy. Now, specifically in this case, Amato took this type of one-sided relationship much further than most people would. One could argue his behavior was consistent with addiction. For example, after the murders, pictures of several credit cards were found on Amato's computer, including those that belonged to his grandmother, uncle, aunt, and one of his cousins. Amato was willing to steal from anyone to stay in contact with Sylvia. What really stood out in this case was the parricide. If there was an addiction, that again is not unusual. That affects many people. But for someone to go this far to communicate with a webcam model, it really doesn't make any sense. We know from the research literature that parricide is rare. Adult parricidal offenders are often psychotic, so they'd have something like schizophrenia. I've seen no evidence of that in this case. Many have antisocial personality disorder, Again, we don't see any discussion of that in this case. Adult parricidal offenders are almost always violent during several incidents before the homicides, which doesn't seem to be what happened here. 62% of these offenders were under mental health care before the offense. Amato had been to that clinic, so there is a connection to that element. One theory about what could have happened in this case is that Amato had this obsession with the model that became almost delusional. He lost track of reality. He had it in his mind that he really couldn't live without her, almost like an extreme fear of abandonment, like his very existence was threatened. Without her, he would be nothing. To preserve his own existence, he was willing to do anything. All people entered into two categories from his perspective: obstacles and Sylvia. So here we see what could be considered narcissism. He only had sight of his own pain. No one else's lives mattered. The last part I want to cover here is the reaction that the family had to Amato's behavior. I have seen so many instances over the years where families continually try to keep offenders out of trouble. They don't want the police involved. They don't want the offender to experience consequences. I understand this position. The law does a great job of punishing and a poor job of rehabilitating. People are just repeatedly disappointed in what the justice system has to offer. They don't view it as really helpful in the end. But at some point, it's really about boundaries. When somebody becomes addicted, the most vulnerable people are the ones close to them. It's a condition that bypasses traditional safety methods, like locking doors and alarm systems. It takes over a victim and turns them into an intruder who victimizes unsuspecting and overwhelmed family members. Boundaries may not have saved Grant Amato, but they may have saved his family. Those are my thoughts on the Grant Amato case. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis on this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.